Most of my videos are about the time I spent in prison, but I thought I would share something a little different today about my childhood. I'm the oldest of 7 children. I have 6 younger brothers and sisters who I love so dearly, and amazing parents. My parents were hard workers and good examples in so many ways. My mother was this creative photographer, hippie lady who loved the outdoors and taught us to play hard and connect, and she's one of the most compassionate people I've ever known. My father was a Vietnam vet, hardworking, structured, disciplined. It was pretty chaotic growing up. We grew up out in the country. My brother Nick was in the middle, and when Nick was born, he was stubborn and strong and determined and passionate, and he was afraid of nothing. Nick loved to play out in the country. He would put in the work to be the best baseball player, the hardest runner, the hardest worker, the best rock collector, the best fisher. He loved it. He was a mountain climber and a mountain biker. Nick just could do everything. And in Nick's teenage years, he was like, literally when he was 16, he became a professional mountain bike racer, and he was racing people in the 18-year-old division and winning. And he would go out and ride every day for 40 to 80 miles. I mean, he was that disciplined about what he did. And in his teenage years, my parents moved into kind of a higher end neighborhood, and Nick tried out for the basketball team and he tried out for student body president, and he didn't make either. And it was a real blow to him. And I think he thought that he didn't get the position because my parents didn't have as much money as some of the other people. He thought it was political, and it really started to eat at him. During those years, me and my brothers and sisters were wild. Like, I was in my 20s and I was a party girl, and we were all just running wild. And Nick started partying, and he did it like he did everything else, 100%. One time he went out and he, I don't even know what drugs he used, but he used a lot of something, and he hit the freeway going about 120, 130 miles an hour. And the cops started chasing him, and he went on a high-speed chase with the cops, and 13 cops chased him back to my parents' house in this gated community. And he pulled up into the driveway, and they all jumped out with their weapons drawn and moved him to the ground, took him to the ground and took him to jail, and then realized he was having a mental breakdown and took him to the mental hospital. And Nick wouldn't even talk for a week. And he just cried and cried. And my parents were religious in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they had a member of our church come talk to him. And Nick said, I want to go on a mission. And a mission is like a service mission when you're 18, 19 years old that you do for our church. And Nick was nowhere prepared to do that. But he said, I'm going to put in the work. And so he went out and he apologized to everyone that he had ever hurt and started making amends and prepared himself to go on a mission. And he was called to serve in Monterrey, Mexico. And he loved his mission, loved the people. But like Nick does, he decided, I am going to do harder and better and more. And he said, I'm going to go on a 40-day fast. And he ended up having another breakdown, and he was sent home. When Nick came home, he was diagnosed with bipolar. And they tried to medicate him, but he wouldn't take the meds. He said, they numb me out. I don't want him. And he ended up marrying a girl that we were concerned about because he had been kind of in that manic episode. But they got married, and Nick went to work, and he was a great salesperson and was making a lot of money, and then he would crash. And the girl got frustrated, and she left, divorced him, but she also wouldn't let him see his kids. And it was devastating for Nick. Like, not only did he crash, but he ended up going, he went to the streets. He walked around just kind of lost. He'd go climb mountains, and we couldn't get him to come home. He'd go live in homeless shelters. I mean, it was the saddest thing. And this kind of went on with Nick during the time that I was dealing with my legal case. And then I went to prison. And while I was in prison, Nick went and lived on the mountain. And my dad thought he was going to die because it was so cold up there. My dad sent my younger brother up to find him and literally saved his life. And Nick came home and stayed with my dad and got medicated. They sent him to the mental hospital, and then he started working just at Subway, a regular job. And about then I came home from prison, and I would go in and see Nick every week. We'd just sit there together and talk to each other. And then one day he told me, he said, I'm going to go to Los Angeles and I'm going to become an actor. It was his dream. And I said, Nick, that sounds like bipolar and mania to me, you know. I said, please don't do that. You've made up so much ground. And he said, I have to go. So he packed up his car. He took off to Los Angeles. And because he's such a great biker, he would speed around all over in Los Angeles and send us videos from homeless camp to homeless camp. And we really thought he would die there. But he called me a couple of years ago and he said, Portia, I can't live like this anymore. He said, I can't live another minute. He said, I need help. And he flew home and he stayed with my dad and mom, and I would go up there and we'd go for walks and I would pray with him, but he was inconsolable. Felt like he had failed on every level. And so I said, Nick, you're strong. You can do this. And he said, I am so weak, Portia. I'm not like I used to be. I tried to get him into treatment centers, but it was just, I can't even describe. He couldn't sleep. He was so depressed. And one morning, my sister drove down to my parents' house to get him some food and just to help. And when she got there, my mom was crying and said she couldn't find Nick. And Kira called me, and I immediately called 911. And they went to the house, and they found my brother. He had shot himself, and he was still alive. And they said, meet us at the hospital. They hadn't told us yet that what had happened, but I was already on my way up, and we met at the hospital. I asked my parents and my sister to stay outside, and I went in and talked to the doctor, and the doctor said, your brother will die today. And I said, is there any way that we can donate his organs? Because my dad's a kidney transplant recipient. And she said, I don't think so. He's lost a lot of blood. And I said, what would you do if it was your brother? And she said, I would let him go. And so I turned around and walked away to go tell my parents. And I felt my brother. I felt his strength pass through me. And I thought, what is going on? And all of a sudden, a social worker comes running up to me and she goes, your brother is fighting to live. We will let him live as long as he can. And I said, please, if we can donate his organs. And I walked out to my parents and I got on my knees and I looked at my parents and I said, Nick is going to die today. And my mother just fell apart. And my dad said, I need to see my son, Portia. I want to see my son before he dies. And my brother lived long enough that we could go in the room with him. And I watched my mother rub my brother's feet. And I watched my father put his hands on my brother's chest and lay his face down on my brother's chest and say, Nick, I just need to hear your heartbeat one last time. How I love you, my son. It's okay. It's time for you to go now. And then we left, and my brother was able to donate everything. We donated everything, his eyes, his heart, his liver, everything. And I knew that my brother's mission was complete. It's been 1.5 years now since we lost my sweet brother, Nick, and how I love him. I wrote a book. My heart was so broken, my second book, Born to be Brave, about my family and my brother. And I guess today, as I prepare to go in the temple, which is an LDS place of worship, my heart is so drawn to my sweet brother and his strength, because I feel it sometimes. I'm going to share some pictures of Nick and my family. It's just something that I felt that I should share today. I know that we lost him in some way, but we also gained so much. And I would never undo every step of that journey, how grateful I am that I got the privilege of walking my brother home.
And climb the mountain. So let's go out there. Let's make it a great day. Got my Batman superhero pants on, so there'll be a superhero on the mountain. So just in case someone needs to be saved, we got a hero on the mountain. So it's going to be a great time. Maybe one of the last times I hike up there, so I'm going to try and get the most out of it and make it a great experience.